Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for a quick clip on the importance of trust funding. So, I always like when I'm going over trust funding, I let my clients know kind of how to visualize how this process works. And so, most of my clients have seen this at one point or another. When you create a trust, what you're doing is you're creating an empty bucket. You're creating a legal vessel that can own and hold property. And so we have three positions in there. We have the grantor, the person who establishes the trust, and then those assets in the trust are held for the benefit of someone else. And so we have the trustee, or what I like affectionately refer to as the CEO of the trust. That's the person who controls the spigot. And then what happens is we have our beneficiaries for whom the assets are held. And obviously, the trustee is in charge of how fast that opens, when it opens, and what the flow is. But the most important thing in everyone's estate plan is the trust only controls what you put in it. And therefore, having the appropriate assets in here for your trustee to manage makes sure that they get to the beneficiaries. So let's talk about some simple things. You really have four categories of assets. Real property is our first one. So we have real property, land. And how do we put that in the trust? Oftentimes, we just execute a quitclaim deed and we get that deed recorded at the Register of Deeds office, and that goes into our trust. And at that point, our trust is at least what we refer to as partially funded. Some of our trusts, we do some irrevocable trust to protect the home. That might be the only asset we put in that trust, and then it's fully funded. But for many of our trusts, there are other assets we want to get in. So let's talk the next easiest one, non-qualified accounts. So when we're talking about non-qualified accounts, we're talking about money markets, CDs, checking, savings, standard brokerage, etc. These accounts, there's really two ways of going about doing it. You can retitle the asset into the revocable trust. So now your checking account is in the name of your revocable trust, or your checking account is in the name of an irrevocable trust. Or you can designate an account payable on death. That means the account stays in the owner's name until they pass away. And then that death beneficiary designation says at the owner's passing, that account is payable on death to the trust. What does that mean? That means that that asset is now not probatable because it has a beneficiary designation to an entity that is going to be there, that trust. Now, brokerage account, just as a little aside, those would be transfer on death, having stocks in there and what have you. Then I'm going to go to the next easiest one, and that's going to be life insurance policies. So life insurance policies work very similar to non-qualified accounts. Generally, you wouldn't retitle the policy into the name of the trust, but what you would do is update your payable on death beneficiary designation to the trust. So that means when you pass away, where maybe before it was payable on death to your children in equal shares, well, now it's payable on death to the trust. Why? Well, there are a couple reasons. Maybe our beneficiaries aren't just kids in equal shares. Maybe we have some charities we wanted to include as well. Maybe we have a special needs subtrust for one of our children in this trust, and we want to make sure their share of the life insurance is protected using that special needs subtrust. All sorts of good reasons on why to route the majority of your assets through the trust. The last one that you have, and the one that kind of is the little wrinkle in everything, are what we call qualified accounts. And qualified accounts, these are your tax deferred accounts. Generally, your retirement accounts, your IRAs, your 401ks, your 403bs, and your 457s. And so these are all tax deferred accounts. Tax deferred accounts, you cannot just go and retitle into another person's name or into another entity like a trust. Why? Because you will have a realization for taxes purposes, which means if I take my IRA and retitle it in my trust, all of those income taxes that have been deferred are going to be payable immediately, and that is very problematic. So then the next question is, if retitling is no, then what's our other option? Well, our other option is very simple. we can go with a payable on death beneficiary, generally better. So then what you're looking at is, do I want to route it through the trust? Is my trust a qualified beneficiary trust, a conduit trust? And if it is, making the trust the beneficiary of your IRA can be useful. However, for most families out there, if you're leaving everything to the kids in equal shares and the kids' lives are doing great, oftentimes it'll be simpler to just POD it directly to the heirs. Not always, but sometimes you want to make that go directly to the heirs, and then you can make a contingent POD to the trust, or if there's a good reason to route it through the trust. Maybe, there's a special needs subtrust and we want to make sure a share of that IRA goes in that special needs subtrust. The most important thing is that every account, that the little thing that I use to let everyone remember is a place for everything and everything in its place. So we want to go line by line through your assets, every piece of property, every non-qualified account, every life insurance policy, and every retirement or qualified account, and make sure that the payable on death beneficiaries match what your overall estate plan is, because the limitation of the trust is it only controls what you affirmatively put in it. So when you sign your documents at our office, you're on the 5-yard line, and it's going to be your responsibility to follow through on these instructions and get perfection on the back end. Thank you for joining us, and remember, never hesitate to reach out with any questions.